Hello, welcome to PaynePoints of Interest with Sarah Harbuck. My co-host today is the lovely Kristen Ellis.
Good morning.
We want to tell the stories of people, their businesses, and the journey that they are on. Our purpose here at PaynePoints is to gather new perspective on starting, growing, maturing, and maintaining businesses of all sizes. So grab that cup of coffee, sit back, and join us as we start this conversation. All right, guys. We are here today with Michael Payne, the brainchild behind PaynePoints. He's going to tell us all about that here in just a minute. I have known Mike for a very long time, and basically the entire time I've known him, he has been in software development or IT support of some kind. So that's the start of PaynePoints. But Mike, recently we've kind of sort of added all these other extra arms to the business. And, we're branching out and doing some things, the podcast being one of them. Mm-hmm. How did you get into this business? Like software development, website design, all the things that you do. Was it just like I'm pretty good at this, I'm going to do it? Or was there like a particular moment that just kind of, bing, the light bulb went off?
I don't know that there was a particular moment. I do know I kind of started the journey really young. I went to my dad with work one time, and because I was like 5 years old, the best way to keep me at work was to put me in front of a computer where I could play games.
I think that's how most 5-year-olds.
Yeah. So I played a game called Gorillas on
I don't remember
DOS.
that.
It was, oh man.
Honestly, though, Oregon Trail is really the only DOS game I remember.
Yeah, I don't.
Right.
Yeah,
that and The Sims or something.
I never really was much into the games.
This was one of those games that came as a kind of, not even like it wasn't a full-fledged game by a game company. It was just like, hey, learn how to program, and here's a game that shows you how to do that.
Oh wow!
Right?
Okay, that's
and
cool.
so it was basically you played against a computer or a second player, and you were a gorilla on top of a bunch of buildings. And you had to put in a direction and a velocity, and then your gorilla would throw a banana at the other one. Okay. And the banana would explode when it hit.
Nice.
So
it was intro to programming?
It was really my intro to programming, and I understood nothing about it. I could look at this code and be like, I don't even know what this does.
But you were going to make that gorilla throw the banana.
I just liked making the gorillas throw the bananas. And so I really started getting into, from that point, I pieced together computers. I learned how to install software, how to, do all the stuff with a computer that you would do. And this was the pre-Windows 95. And then I learned how to do Windows 95, Windows 98. I just kept going, kept adding to the knowledge, and like really ticking off my dad sometimes because I would just leave. I didn't have a space in my room, so I would just like leave computers on the kitchen table, and he'd come home and be like, "What are you doing?"
I think your wife Liz probably can relate to that as well.
She does. I just leave things everywhere.
I'll come in here, and the workspace is just covered in laptops and phones and tablets.
I just spread out everywhere. I'm like Houston.
Yes.
So I honestly, like, what I thought I was going to grow up to be was an architect. I had started with the, one day in some class in like 4th or 5th grade or something like that. They had us draw floor plans to like on graph paper to introduce us to graph paper and kind of, get used to calculating
spatial
area,
awareness,
and things like that, and I just really, I didn't care about calculating area other than the fact of would it fit, when I draw lines, is this really enough room for me to do something with? And how do you draw doors? And, how do you do all this stuff? Like, what's the process? So,
so it wasn't so much the finished product, it was the process that got you.
It was the idea of starting with a blank piece of paper that had all these boxes that represented a square foot per box, and going, I could make my house look like whatever I wanted it to do. And if I took 2 sheets of paper,
You can have a second story.
I can put a second story on that.
Yeah.
You know, But the other thing I also did was actually like, we had an old typewriter, and when computers came around, like it was not an old one, it was an electronic typewriter, right? So I was like, I'd watched a movie or something about a writer. I don't know, maybe it was Misery. I was probably too young,
Wow.
to be watching the movie. But somebody in this movie was writing on a typewriter, the way writers do. So I was really into science fiction and Star Trek and all that. So I started writing my own little stories. And I had like reams of paper of these just little stories I would write, thinking I was doing something cool. And the two things never intersected in my entire life. Those two things.
Architecture and writing?
Writing, correct.
Yeah.
Right. Because one was drawing pictures and one was putting words on paper. Like,
Right.
how could they be connected in
Right.
my 10-year-old brain, right? But I got to high school. I wanted to take programming. I did that. I got a job. My dad actually was able to do this like summer internship program at his work, where I would come in for the summer, and now he wouldn't have to worry about me running around the neighborhood without
Right.
adult supervision.
Right.
So and I made money. So I did that, and I was basically IT support. I was a 15-year-old teaching people who were more than twice my age, what
Well,
they were
that's
doing wrong with their
kind of
computers.
Par for the course when it
Yeah.
comes to technology and things.
It was
these
still
days.
awkward. It does not remove the awkwardness, right? It's like it doesn't.
True.
Like there's no way this 15-year-old kid knows more than me, and then like 3 clicks later they're like, "What the crap?"
How did you do that?
What did you do?
Yeah.
But my supervisor recognized my interest in programming and gave me some tasks and things like that. I actually ended up continuing to work remotely at the end of the summer. Like when I go back to school, they actually, like this is on the first, that has to be like some of the first real remote work, right? I was working 3 hours a day dialing into their systems and writing code,
Huh.
So,
Interesting.
You were a baby programmer.
so I did that, and then I kind of kept on doing it. Like I liked programming a lot for similar reasons, though I really didn't recognize at the time. I liked the idea of starting off with a blank screen and making it do whatever I want.
So you've worked in programming for a long time. You've done a lot of jobs, but what made you specifically go, I'm going to start this business, PaynePoints, and expand it like you have? What was the kind of moment there that you had where you're like, I'm going to do this?
So it really was, I guess, kind of falling into responsibility is kind of how I'll put it. It's
Okay.
I was working full time, and I really just I recognized the fact that I had zero control. I'd worked for years for a company here in Lufkin, and then I moved and worked for Elliott Electric in Nacogdoches for 5 years. And at the end of that, towards the end of the 5 years, I started recognizing the fact that I'd reached my political peak there. Mm-hmm. There wasn't much left I could do because the political will to do what needed to be done didn't exist yet.
So you kind of hit a ceiling, is what you're saying.
Right.
Okay.
And it's not that it couldn't work. It's just that how much effort was going to go into it,
And if you're going to put that kind of effort into, why not put it into your own business?
Something for somebody else.
Right. And so I started the process of going, okay, so what can I do? Now, at this time, I'd also, started a small startup with a few guys who I didn't really know very well, but we've been working on it for a couple of years, and I was really hopeful it was going to go somewhere. And so I really was trying to find a way to not have to work my nights and weekends on that, because I was working full time. So I went, and over the course of, 3 or 4 months or so, I finally found the exact right position where I was taking care of my bills, but only working half the time. And so I transitioned to that, and it kind of struck me that the extra time I was spending working on the side project just was not worth it. It wasn't generating revenue. It wasn't every single time we finished something, there was something new to be done. There were various reasons why that side project was not working for me. And so I put my focus into developing myself more to get more contracts. And what that ended up doing was I spent the primary contract I had that was paying the bills. I was there for about 7 months or so. And I end up coming across another potential contract. I left, it was about time for me to transition to a new contract, which was a real learning experience for me. You go into that and you're like, this is a contract. It could end at any time.
Yeah.
So it was really always very unnerving.
Scary, yeah.
And it started making me realize I have to expand on that. I have to be able to handle 2 at a time. I have to be able to, do all these things. And so it really was just a natural evolution of doing the steps to create PaynePoints. PaynePoints was something I started as a website. Like that was the revelation. I think that was, of all the things that you say, there's an aha moment, right? Yeah. The name was the only thing.
So it was like you just started with the name and built off of that.
Well, because
your last name is Payne.
The name came from. The name was created in like 2011. I've had that domain registered since like 2011, right? And at first I was like, I'm just gonna create a Facebook page where I post funny or relevant computer topics. Today in the history of computing. Things like that. And that I didn't really have the dedication to make that go anywhere, and I'm not social media smart enough to really make that go anywhere. But I let it just kind of sit there for a long time, and when I went to go do my own company, I knew from day one leaving Elliott that I wasn't going to do these contracts over, my personal. I did it over my social for a period of time just because I didn't want to go and register an LLC and do all that legwork, right? But the plan was always to do that, right? So
you kind of went about it in a kind of backwards sort of way. You started your legal business kind of after you'd worked under your own name for a while,
right? But it was always under PaynePoints. The minute I was transitioning from Elliott, I took that. I was like, what am I going to call myself when I have a company?
Yeah.
When I do it as a company, I've had this domain registered forever. That's what I'm going to call it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. And so the idea of PaynePoints kind of evolved from what is it? It more of I got struck by a lightning. Here's a name. What does it really mean? And I see that in a lot of people where they start something and they're like, well, it goes back to that, I guess, that question, what's in a name?
Sometimes people just start with an idea,
right,
or a name or a logo, and they build an entire brand off of that.
Right.
Exactly.
So, it's kind of like we talked about before. There's not really a right or wrong way per se. There's going to be easier ways and harder ways maybe. But using your name to play off of that, and if you look at different like Reddit, for instance, there's the hashtag PaynePoints, PAIN, like pain, like I've got pain in my leg or something. So I thought that was kind of clever, using your name to build a brand, and it has this kind of fun play on words, as well as your intention was, at least later on, to kind of help other businesses and figure out whatever was painting them in some way.
Help them.
Right.
So,
I mean, that really evolved from what I was doing was, in software, one of the biggest hurdles for everyone in software is the knowledge gap. I don't care how many years you've been writing software. I've been doing it for more than 20. You're always going to have a knowledge gap. Always. Yeah. There's no way to have all the knowledge it requires to do something. There's so many different technologies, so many different frameworks, so many different pieces that all have to go together.
So rapidly too.
And you are only ever responsible for your individual set of pieces. It's like having a giant puzzle across the table, and all 4 of us have to put our pieces together.
Right.
You cannot do it all yourself. And so what it came from, that first contract, was actually me solving a particular pain point for that company. Company up in Tyler who does horizontal well drilling software that wanted to upgrade, but with their current team, they needed to fill a knowledge gap. And that was my job. My job was to come in and help them fill a knowledge gap, something I knew about and could fill them in on and guide them along the way till they got to a point where they could do it on their own.
That's interesting because you took a very technical job and sort of created this more... I don't know if this is the right phrase for it, but like humanizing sort of, hey, they've had this issue. You created software to help them fix the issue in their business. And so did that kind of go, oh, I could maybe do this in a less technical way with other issues businesses are having, with things that I know in starting my own business? Or did that sort of evolve slowly with different contracts?
So if there's one thing that I feel like I do pretty well, it's pattern recognition. It's kind of like built into my soul, I suppose.
Right.
And what happened was when I had all these troubles with that side project, my immediate reaction was to try to understand better why those problems occurred. What was the truth? What was the pattern, right? And so I started looking at other people's businesses and other people's stories themselves, and said, "There's a lot here for me to learn." Right. And it's been a long road to get to the point where we are now sitting here at this table. But that was always my thing. Is I could learn something from other people's experiences, find the patterns, and maybe avoid difficulties myself, or to help other people avoid difficulties in their business.
Right.
You know, if there's the Reddit has that continuous scrolling on all their apps, all these news apps that continue, like you scroll forever, right?
Yeah.
Until you get to the point where you hit that refresh button and there's no more there, and you've reached the end of the internet.
Is that a thing?
I don't think it's
on my Reddit app. It's a thing.
it's possible.
Yes.
Oh, wow. You learn something new every day.
I have
folks.
done it. At that point, it's like, okay, it's time for bed now. I can put the phone down.
Yeah.
I've got to be in. You see, as you scroll through all those posts, the same thing, different people posting the same question, the same thing, the same difficulties. And me as a developer, I go, this is inexcusable.
We could do this to fix this problem.
I never want to have two people ask me the same exact question. If I've answered a question, right, that information should be available. And so it just comes from seeing all these people that are just random strangers on the internet and considering them part of my overall team. It frustrates me.
Right.
And so I don't know that I've solved that problem yet, but I do believe there's a solution to that problem where, you know, things fit together. You know, I say that there's this knowledge gap and all these different puzzle pieces, and we're only in charge of our own puzzle pieces, right? But the truth of the matter is, it's still a puzzle. It's a complete puzzle. The pieces fit together, right? And so it's always been for me a process of recognizing those patterns and seeing it. It doesn't just apply to what I do in software. It applies to business. There are things we do with software. I mean, I've been a business software developer for as long as I remember. I never got into game development. I never got into other pieces. So when I'm solving business problems, I sit there and go, well, why can't I use this
to solve
over
that.
here?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, you know, you're talking about the struggles you've seen with other businesses and they're having the same questions. What has been something that you, Michael, or PaynePoints in general has had to kind of overcome in a struggle or obstacle or difficulty that you've experienced like other business owners? What's been your biggest one that you can think of?
I think one of the largest obstacles to overcome is getting past the idea that I have to do everything myself.
Yeah, that's a struggle for most people, I think.
I think it's a huge struggle, you know.
Yeah.
86% as of 2016, 86% of the businesses in the United States are sole proprietors in some way, shape, or form. Going beyond the technical of what counts as a sole proprietor, you know, it's essentially consider it to be anybody who has you know, no official employees on the books. You know, PaynePoint still classifies as that.
Right.
The only employee on the books is me.
Right.
You know, and I want to change that. However, a lot of businesses function with independent contractors and things like that. They don't do the work themselves.
Right.
But there is still a significant portion of people who they do all of the work themselves and their families do all the work in their businesses.
Some businesses, though, outgrow that sole proprietor if you want to bring in more revenue, you want to expand your business, it can't always ever just be you, which is a realization that I know you came to last year when we had a conversation. It was like, I'm going to have to start hiring other people if I'm going to
grow, if
I'm going to make this business happen in a bigger scale.
And you know, I think the biggest difficulty with that is not or being okay with not being sure that it's the right decision, that every decision you make in that is the correct one.
There's a lot of uncertainty when it comes to, taking chances, especially when it's your business. It's your baby. It's your passion project. It's, you want to put everything into it to make it work, but there comes a point when you have to kind of...
Well, but then there's that other added stress of, if I hire people, then I've got to make sure that we always maintain enough money coming in to be able to pay these people. Right. And that stress that's a lot.
It is.
In addition to, letting someone else take over the reins of something that you've created. Or taking over a particular part of it. That was a struggle that I had when running my photography business, and one that I failed at, really, because I just didn't want to give that control to someone else.
Right.
Yeah.
And that can be to a person's detriment to some extent.
Yeah,
and
it can be tough.
And I think when it takes a stronger person to let that control go, I think. Mm-hmm. And let other people handle things that you're not as good at.
Yeah. I think, the way you've been doing it and the way the business that I am eventually going to run myself it has done it is you start off with, independent contractors. You sole proprietorship. You get a couple of independent contractors working for you. And as you start to see that, yes, this is going to work, and that okay, we are making enough to make sure that this is going to, and then you can hire them on,
Right.
So it's a slightly less risky, you're
kind of testing the waters a little bit.
Yeah, it's you're not jumping in head first. Yeah.
Surprisingly enough, I think the most difficult, hiring decision, in air quotes there, that I made was actually Sam.
Yeah.
It took a lot for Ben to convince me to let go of finances.
Yeah.
Because of that. Because at that point, right, this podcast had already started. Uh-huh. You and I were doing it, Sarah.
Yeah.
And I think we were making a decision to bring Megan on. We were making the decisions to
you just had
who's
too much,
all going to be there.
You had too much on your plate, and it was like, well, you can't handle running the soundboard and doing the finance.
We had just taken a big contract on, the
Yeah.
massive contract, and I was delegating a lot of that work out to people, and we just sat down and go, okay, what are we gonna do? And I remember outside in the back here, Ben's like, I don't want to tell you what to do, but you have to talk to Sam.
Yeah.
Right? You have to let him run your finances. You cannot be spending, a couple hours every day looking at your invoices, looking at your money, doing all your projections. He goes, how much time did you spend doing all those projections you sent me the other day? And I went like 6 hours. He goes, what are you doing? You should have been working on setting up the project.
That's 6 hours you could have been billing your,
exactly.
your contracts.
Right.
So it was really, really difficult. But Sammy,
to let go.
Sammy has been a godsend. Because of him, we've been able to not just maintain what we have, but even amidst this COVID crisis, we've not had to let anyone go in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
We've not had to reduce any payrolls. We've been able to maintain it. We've been able to help in other areas that we need to help with. So it is a huge thing to be able to bring people on and to let go of the things that not just the things that are personal projects that you invest yourself in, but to really give up control of the things that make all that happen.
Yeah.
Well, and I think one of the things I experienced when I worked as the shop manager for Black Spot for a while, when you give over control of the money to someone who does not have an emotional investment in the business, meaning they didn't help create it, it's not their baby, so to speak, they're way more objective about
Yeah.
the money.
Yeah.
And they can price things and they can budget things way better than the person who is so emotionally invested. And that's just something I have witnessed in every single person that I have known who started a business. As soon as they gave up the control of the money to someone who was, number one, suited for that particular type of work to begin with, but
Right.
two, had no emotional investment in the business. And when I say that, I mean that they were hired on to do a specific job to take care of the money and the budgeting and the spending, but they don't have anything to do necessarily with the creative part of the business, or that they didn't help create it. And when that happens, I notice that the finances are in such better check than if they're left into the hands of those who've created the business.
Yeah.
And that's not a criticism or a negative necessarily. It's just an observation that I have seen across the board with just about everybody. When you can give over the control of the money to someone, obviously a trusted individual.
Right. That's the tough part, is finding somebody that you trust.
But they
to,
don't
you
have
know.
that emotional attachment. I had no emotional attachment to, tattooing as a life passion. It was like, I'm going to
Right.
come in and I'm going to help this business do this. And when they told me what they were charging, and I was like, what? No. Let me talk to everybody from now
Yeah.
on, because
Yeah.
then I'm selling the artist and
Yeah.
they're not having to sell themselves, which is really hard to do for a lot of people.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
I think that was a very smart decision on your part to hire Sam. On that note, what has this business taught you the most about yourself or running a business?
Wow. There's been a lot of lessons learned over the last year, for sure. I didn't tend to think that there was an opposite side of the spectrum, but I once pointed out to someone that they didn't take enough ownership in their own business. And then it was pointed out to me that I take too much. And it had never occurred to me before that was
Yeah.
even a possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Both can be detrimental. I mean, any kind of extreme, regardless of what it is,
Right.
can be a bad thing.
Yeah. And so,
It's hard to find that balance sometimes.
big
Yeah.
lesson is the maintaining that balance, and another big lesson that kind of plays into that is when you're able to maintain that level of balance, it opens you up to so many new opportunities. My confidence level in what I'm capable of doing has shot up drastically.
Right, because you're not, you've delegated out all the things you're not so great at.
Right.
So you're just focusing
Yeah.
on the things you're good at.
I am focused. I am pure in what I'm able to offer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also no longer a thing where if a particular client disagrees that they need that, that's perfectly fine. If they don't think they need that, then either I convince them they do, or we go our separate ways. There's no
Yeah.
internal struggle and anxiety in me that I'm not good enough for that work.
That's their decision. It's their business.
Exactly.
Let them make.
Don't fight
yeah.
unnecessary battles.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, that was a very huge eye-opening thing for me. That sometimes when we get into difficult situations, especially with clients of ours, it happens. I mean, there's a guy who teaches software developers about the process of software development, not the code, not the technical, but the way we do it, the organization of it, the workout I'm tracking, and all
strategy,
that,
basically.
the strategy. And
Yeah.
at the beginning of his talks, every time he goes, guys, put on your shirts. And they go, what shirts? He goes, you haven't bought your shirts. And the audience is sitting there like, what is this guy talking about?
I
He's
don't
crazy. Right? He's like, every single one of you needs to go and buy a shirt. And on the front of the shirt, it has to say, what we do is hard. Because what he doesn't want to hear from software developers is, well, we shouldn't do that because our job's already hard enough.
Right.
It's not a matter of debating whether or not what we do is difficult. It's more a matter of, we know it's difficult. Let's not make it more difficult by arguing over what's needed or what's not needed on this other side that we aren't so good at. coders, man, we're really good at slapping down some code and making things work and coming up with creative solutions to it, right? But when it comes to managing our time in general,
Yeah.
coders are terrible. We're all awful.
You're going to
Okay.
do whatever it takes to fix this problem, however
We
long
will-
it takes, no matter what you have to do.
Fall down a rabbit hole,
Yeah.
end up in Wonderland,
It's not just a rabbit hole, right? Have you ever seen someone who like keeps like bird dogs in like their backyard, like they have a fenced off area, and you can't mow that because your lawnmower will fall into every single hole. That's what a developer's brain space really looks like. It is just a series of holes that we try
Fall
carefully
into.
to avoid, but we always fall into at least one every day.
It is,
So-
it is a foreign world. I had to take C++ back in the day in college.
God bless your soul.
I was an AB student forever, and I made a D, and I was so proud of myself. I worked harder for that D in C++ than I did in advanced calculus.
My freshman year of college was you had to take a computer programming class, and this was back. Windows 95 was still the standard. It's really dating all of us. And you would write this code in MS-DOS and what have you, and I got it, but it was one of those things where I was like, this seems so pointless to me. Like, why?
Yeah.
You have to really love that sort of thing, those little
Right.
nuances.
Right.
This is why so many people's different brains are built to do different things. Thank
yeah.
goodness we're not all just cookie cutters and we all have to do
Yeah.
the same thing.
The only thing I remember is if-then statements, and I don't even remember how to do it. I just remember that was the one thing in that course that I sort of halfway understood.
Yeah.
So in my high school, when I took programming, I took the basic programming courses my freshman year of high school.
Yeah.
Okay. And that was the visual basic, the drag and drop. You put buttons on a screen, you double click it, you tell it what
Right.
to do. Very straightforward, very simple, and that's why I loved it, because it was a lot like that graph paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
But then they never, the counselor even advised me, said you probably shouldn't take programming your freshman year, because the next class that you're supposed to take is computer science AP, which is the C++.
Yeah.
But you can't take that till your junior year. So I waited a whole other year to take that. I went ahead and took programming anyway, because I was like, the authority, blah. And I went and took that. But then, of course, I worked, so I was always doing programming, right? And when I got to my junior year and took C++, I was so excited. I was going, I'm going to do computer science AP. This is going to be great, right? And then I took C++. And it's not visual in the slightest.
No.
And this is coming from a guy who's familiar with, command lines and doing all that
Right.
and messing with computer systems. And it still annoyed me
Yeah.
at how insanely difficult it was to make something actually happen on the screen that was worthwhile. And it actually kind of, I think, was detrimental to my programming want, my need, what I wanted to do, because this was so unlike anything I was doing, even for a job. Nobody was using C++ to write visual applications. You just
Right.
don't do it, right? And if you do, you're a 20-year veteran already, and back in the late 90s, early 2000s, who already hates themselves and their lives because they've been writing in C++ for 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah, is that a thing?
it
People
was not.
don't do that anymore, right? C++? Is that still a thing?
C++ is still very good. Actually, there's a group out of the UK called SciChart, and they actually combine C++ with the visual. They make charting stuff for programmers,
okay.
so they make really fast that can handle a lot of data, right? And so when you get to that point in programming where you're like, I'm doing this visual thing, but it needs to be super fast and handle 1 billion data points.
Right.
You're going, I'm gonna have to write this in C++, aren't
Yeah.
I? How much money do you have? This is gonna take a while.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
That's
It was-
really going back there.
It was a struggle.
Well, what advice would you have for anybody who's wanting to start their own business or that's struggling running their own business and have come in contact with some, obstacles and hoops they've had to jump through? What would you tell them?
I think the thing that has helped me the most and maybe of help to folks out there is to do your best to understand the breadth of the problems you're facing. You cannot solve problems in a vacuum. In being a huge Star Trek fan, I definitely watched Discovery when it came out on CBS All Access. I went and found a way to watch this, right? And one of the episodes, the captain of the ship, who was played by the I forget what his name is, the guy who played Lucius Malfoy in Harry Potter.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I know who you're talking about. I can't think of his actual real name.
He plays the captain.
Yeah.
On the ship, and he's having a discussion with the main character, right? Mm-hmm. And he has a line where he says, "Context is for kings," and the implication being that having no context is for peasants.
Jason Isaacs, by the way.
Jason Isaacs.
There you go.
Okay.
It was going to drive me crazy.
That line, I think, it really defined how I solve problems. Is I don't solve problems in a vacuum, right? Yeah. The more context I have, the more, the better the solution to the problem I can come up with is. And I don't think this is something that's special to me. I think that's something that every human being can do.
Yeah.
So my advice is never forget the importance of context in every single problem you're trying to solve.
It's a good piece of advice.
That is good.
Yeah.
What was the best piece of advice you received when you were starting out?
If you are putting in effort to solve a particular problem, and you're surrounded by a bunch of very smart people, especially, right? Don't spend more than 30 minutes trying to figure it out on your own. Yeah. Ask for help.
Yeah. Good one.
That's a very good one. Yep.
Well, Mike, where can people find you on the interwebs?
Oh, I think I'm one of those people. I'm surprised I haven't gotten like identity theft so much in my life.
God. And you're a programmer, for crying out loud.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure it's just luck. So I can be found in a variety of places, but my Instagram handle is CIO Payne, P-A-Y-N-E. I'm at LinkedIn. You can find me at the URLs linkedin.com/in/MEPJR, like my name, Michael E. Payne Jr. And I can be found on Facebook as well at CIO Payne.
Okay. Good deal. Well, I think that's going to wrap us up for today. Thanks, everybody, for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed today's interview. Tell each other your stories. Send us yours. If you want to be on our podcast to share your story, you can contact us on our website at PaynePoints.com. All of our social media is linked, and all of our older podcasts are on there as well. So give us a listen. All right, guys. We're going to get to work, so we'll see you next time.
Have a good one.